I wanted to talk about today is uh, further into the story of my gang stalking, the whole entire story, and just the experience. You see the long video that's like almost 2 hours long, that was just like barely even a portion of it. I couldn't even get into so many other things, and I didn't want to make it too long. But anyways, I decided I'm just going to go over what happened actually during that event, which caused me to lose my job, what happened there, to tell you what I think and what I believe happened and what they planned to do and how they planned to set me up and what their plans were, and then my experience through the whole thing, also through the experience with God. And I also want to point out, I always thought that maybe there was a God, and I never really stuck to any religion. And in fact, like, I honestly truly despised like church and like the whole thing, anything about it. And it was more of like a back thing, like maybe if God exists, kind of. But especially when it came to like religion or Christian or anything like that, is just like, I despise it, and just the whole thought of like church and the way that they are and act and everything before this. So I never really believed anything before it. And so I just want to tell you this experience with God, like during this whole thing. And it also shows that undertone of where people talking about these religious, this spiritual side of things are happening with gang stalking, and how they think it's like a demonic, it's some spiritual warfare, okay? And that it's just all spiritual, none of it's real, okay? But then some people say, no, it really is real, this is happening. Well, what I'm here to tell you when I go into this further detail is that it's a combination of both. And I believe what's happening is it has to do with free will, okay? So the government, doing this to people, it's affecting people's free will of choice, that everyone has a decision to make, and they need to do that for themselves. And to try to trick someone or to force someone or to believe something that's not true, I think that's where you see the stepping stone come in, and that God actually did come in. And it's funny because I think it's like that's kind of what they wanted to happen. Like they planned, like, well, I'll get into that further. But anyway, so I want to tell you more about the event. First off, what happened to the event and how I got fired. A little bit more about that so it makes sense. And that it was set up. Okay, so anyways, guys, so what did end up happening that night when I said, so someone in the residence called the police right on me. The reason what happened was the person who called had said that I had attacked them, okay? And the thing is that I did not attack them, okay? And I didn't physically touch any person. I didn't attack them. And by the time that when this person had called and the police actually showed up, it was probably around 30 minutes after that the cops even showed up at the house. And the person who called wasn't even at the residence, okay? They weren't even at the house. The person who called wasn't even at the residence during this time, okay, when the cops showed up. And when the cops did show up, they were guns blazing. I got guns pulled on me, all this, all because someone said that I attacked them, when I did not attack anyone. Okay, I didn't attack anyone. That was just based off of what someone said. Okay, and what ended up happening, what they so-called took me in for, is that they held me, not because of a mental state, because there was nothing to really hold me on for. I was being clear, and I was directly stating, I said, what do you guys have to detain me for? What am I getting held for? Not only did I not attack anyone, there's no evidence that I attacked anyone. There's no physical injury to anyone because I didn't attack anyone, okay? And so basically they decided that it was a 51-50 because a threat to someone else. But there was no attack. So how am I a threat to someone when there wasn't an attack? And there was no evidence of attack. And when the cops got there, like I said, is that the person who called wasn't even at the residence. So this just shows you how this whole thing, they knew exactly what they were doing. This thing was set up, however it worked out, like I said, they expected something to happen, because I was drugged. So they figured however it ends up happening is that something will most likely happen. Their reasoning was a 51-50 because I was a threat to someone, because that's the only reason they had anything to hold against me. Now, if you even look like on Cops, if you watch Cops or anything, is that even when there's a physical assault and there's a cut on someone's eye and they're bleeding, where there was a physical attack, many times people don't even get arrested. It's because it's one story against another person's and they don't know what happened. No one was there. So it's their word against the other person's word. And what ends up happening is that they'll say, do you want to press charges? And if the person says no, they can't arrest. They legally can't even arrest them because they don't know what happened and the person's not pressing charges. So this just shows you how illegal this arrest or detainment was, okay? Because not only did I not attack anyone, there was not even any evidence of me. There was no physical injury because I didn't attack anyone. And I'm sitting there telling them, what do you have to hold me for? I go, this is completely illegal. You have nothing to hold me for because I didn't attack anyone. And like I said, that when there actually is a physical assault, a lot of times they don't even get arrested because, like I said, it's word for word, and then the person also has to press charges. So this was a completely unlawful arrest in itself, or detainment, or whatever you want to call it, this 5150, completely unlawful. It had no legal backing whatsoever behind this detainment because there was no physical assault. I didn't attack anyone, and there wasn't even any evidence of attacking. So basically, they held me on a 5150 for possible threat to someone else's safety just because someone said that. And I kept explaining, how are you holding me because someone claimed that I came after them when I didn't attack anyone? So that doesn't even make sense. I kept actually stating that to them. I go, how are you guys holding me? What are you holding me for? You based off someone's claim that I came after them, yet there's not even any physical evidence and I didn't attack anyone. Yet they still pursued it and they still did it. And so again, I'm even giving them an example. So basically what you're saying is that if I call the police right now and I say, this person attacked me, they came after me, and I call the police, come arrest them. They can't just show up and arrest the person that I said attacked them. There has to be evidence. Okay, there has to be actual physical assault, something on the person. There was nothing. And the reason is because I didn't do anything. So as you can see, this was set up and they knew what was happening and they wanted to hold me for something. And so what they decided to hold me on was a 5150 because they said I was a threat to someone else, although there was no attack and there was no evidence of an attack. Okay, and then what they proceeded to do after that, so they took me in. I was taken to the hospital. Then they come to me and I even asked, I said, how are you holding me on a 5150? I'm staying completely calm this whole entire time. So there's nothing to even hold me for. It was an absolute joke. It really was. And it was a disgrace to law enforcement, to the community, of the actions of the department and the people involved in it, because there's nothing to hold me for. I'm sitting there completely calm, twiddling my thumbs, like, what are you guys holding me for? Because someone said I attacked them. That's it. And so I kept asking them that, right? Then they continued to hold me overnight, and then they say, oh, there's no room here. We don't have room here to hold you. And then they proceed to then leave me out in the middle of they leave me out in the open on a little bed, okay, at the hospital. And then in the morning, they say, oh, well, there's no room for you. Not only here, but nowhere in the whole county. Nowhere in the whole entire county. Nowhere near at all. There's no room for me to be held, okay? And then so therefore, they have to drive me 3 hours away. 3 hours, okay? The only facility, right, that could hold me. That's a lie. That was a lie. That was a fabrication. They did that on purpose. First of all, the arrest was an unlawful hold, arrest, detainment, whatever you want to call it. Then at the hospital, they said they didn't have room to hold me. And then if they didn't have room to hold me, there's no other place in the whole entire county that they could have held me. That's a lie as well. And what they then proceeded to do was then to drive me 3 hours away, completely away, to a different facility to hold me on these made up charges. Okay, then I'm held there, okay, and then I'm forced to stay there, right, for a specific amount of time because it's a 5150 so-called hold. It's an absolutely ridiculous hold, by the way. So then while I am in this facility, and I'm just sitting there going, I cannot believe all this is happening, right? Because I knew I'd been drugged. I knew that people had been going through my house. All my communications were monitored. Now, the person who called the police on that really got me in a bind, because what ended up happening, I didn't have access to my cell phone. I was being held now. Now I'm 3 hours away. Okay, and now my room's completely open. Anyone can go in and out of it. They can take anything, get any evidence. They're walking through my room, my cell phone, anything that would need to be taken or covered up or whatever. Now they just have a free-for-all to go through my room, through my cell phone, any of my communications while I'm away. I also want to point out too, the whole point of this, the targeting and gang stalking and setting up and how it's done, is that by the time whatever they do to you and they basically crush you and they try to crush you financially and basically discredit you completely to your friends, family, everyone, is that by the time they've done this, if you even have access or the ability to make a video or to tell your story, is that you don't want to, and that's the whole point of it. Okay, to make you look bad, and they know that a lot of people don't want to say what happened. Well, because they know a lot of people aren't going to believe them. But I don't care, because this is the truth. So that's why I'm telling you, this is what happened. And if you see, the story is that it was completely unlawful, the whole entire thing, and it was a lie, just like they didn't have room to hold me locally. That was a lie. Okay, and now I'm at this facility, and then so this is where this whole thing starts, where it really starts getting strange, okay, and weird. Is that so I'm in there, you know, I'd say maybe 1 or 2 nights, and I woke up in the morning, I'd come out of my room or just maybe taking a shower or something like that, and then there's a new person that just got there, and I hadn't seen them yet since they came in, and it was just sitting there on a chair, and when I walked up, he was looking at me, he came right up to me, and he goes, "I'm here for you." Okay, he goes, "I'm here for you." And it was like he was waiting for me, and he knew who I was, right? And he goes, "You know, I'm here for you." And he goes, I'm Justin Hayward. Or no, he said, he goes, "I'm Justin from Hayward." Okay, but yet on his wrist brace it said Matthew Grace on it. And he goes, "I'm here for you." And he was like, right when I walked in, I was like, he was waiting for me, and then he came up. And then he goes, and then he like takes me to the window, and he looks out at the mountains, and he goes, "They're trying to keep you from the top." He goes, "They're trying to control you." And basically, and so we're talking, and I'm like, this is getting kind of weird here right now. And so as we're sitting there, and he's talking, and then we go up to the counter where these people are, where you have to talk to them to either get like phones, or if you want to get on the phone or anything like that, or if you have any questions. And he's standing there next to me, and he's going like, "See, they think I'm you now." Okay? And then when he tells this person behind the counter, and then this person behind the counter keeps mixing up his name, and she keeps calling him Brad, which is my name. And so we're sitting here, and then, you know, we're talking. Basically, he goes, "I'm God." He goes, "I'm here. No one's ever seen me before," and all this. And then he puts his hand on my heart. And, you know, regardless of the reason, and I'm like, this is strange here. And, you know, at that moment, though, like, there is something that did honestly come over me being there. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, "You're in a 5150 Holocaust." And what isn't that kind of funny and ironic, that kind of the perfect area to be in, because no one would believe you, right? Right? If that was true or something, that a lot of people wouldn't believe it, because it's like, oh yeah, well, what do you expect? You're in a 5150, right? But something did come over me, and I did actually have like a good feeling at that point, at least at that instance. And basically, and then he's going on and saying, you know, "You're a prize fighter," and all this, right? But anyway, so, you know, I go to my room or whatever, and then I come back out, and then all of a sudden he's gone. So he's no longer there. So they moved him to a different location in the building. So they moved him to a different location or something, because he wasn't there when I first got there, and then he had just randomly come in sometimes, and then after I talked to him, he left. Then right after him, after he was gone, some other old guy comes in named John. We just started talking right away, and he was talking with me. He's an older guy, maybe like 75 or whatever, somewhere around there. And then we start talking, and I just kind of, one of these guys, I was just hanging out there talking to him the whole time while I'm stuck in there. And then anyway, so John, he ends up going in my room for the night. So then when we wake up, the cameras inside the facility, right, they have cameras that go down the hallways and everything that were in there. All of a sudden, there's some guy who's up there, and they're working on the cameras, and they're changing them and like adjusting them or something, like just randomly. So the next day they come up there and start changing the cameras out and like moving them and switching them around. They did it to all the cameras. It was really weird. Majority of the time while I'm in there, I'm hanging out with him, just helping him. He needed like help walking with like a cane and all this stuff. And then so like the day before I left, he goes, "Hey, you want to go to Florida?" He goes, "I got a house right there, right on the beach." And then he gives me a cell phone number and all this. He goes, are you sure you really don't want to go? He's like, you can stay at my house. It's right on the beach. There's a lot of new jobs out there. There's construction jobs out there that you can pick up. I'm like, oh, well, I don't know. Let me think about it. Oh, and then also, like, I want to say, so I thought that was weird. The one person, right, who I was talking to says, I'm here for you. And then he says, my name's Justin. I'm from Hayward. But yet again, like I said, his tag that he had said Matthew Grace on it. And then the next day after he left, in the morning, they start switching out all the cameras inside the building and adjusting them where we are inside there. And as I'm sitting too with John too the next day, it was really weird. Like, when they kept staring from behind the camera, and they're looking, and they're looking like something really weird was happening, and they'd be like looking, and then some other lady, then she'd call someone else, and then they look and go, and I'm like, what's going on over here? And it was so weird. And then they pull out the papers, and they look at it like it was weird, and then they look up again, they'd be like, and make a weird face again, like something was like confusing them or something. Like, I'm like, what are they staring at? Which is weird too. But anyway, so that all happens, right? So then I go home, right? And then so when I get home, I'd already missed a bunch of work. And when I go back to work, right? Again, there's more weird pictures now posted up. Now there's like some weird like Indonesian like person who looks like a midget, all weird, holding a little baby big old picture that they put up on the wall. They brought in these little like riddles that were about this long, and they've set them again like right by our main office desk. And they're saying, we ain't in Kansas anymore, Dorothy, and all this, and weird sayings like that, referring to like what happened, like they knew what happened to me, and still acting like they don't know. But then again, you see more objects, more pictures. So then they proceed to tell me, oh, like, what happened, where have you been, right? Because I didn't have my cell phone, I couldn't call anyone, I couldn't tell anyone from my work, so it was just like I was gone from my work. Okay? And again, that was a perfect example and excuse to give them, right, that I just had missed work. Okay? And then they go, oh, well, you need to go back to your doctor to get a note. Until you can get a note, you can't work. Again. And this is where it seriously gets super weird. Because at this point, leading up to this point, if you watch my video, how it all went down, I already knew. I mean, I've been drugged already. Someone had been going through my room, my car, my house. And then now, right, I get held on it, like this detainment for 5150. And now I'm missing work. I don't have my cell phone. My room's completely open. Anyone can go in and out of it. So by this time, I come back to work, I'm just like, man, I cannot believe all this is happening, right? And so anyway, so they say, I gotta go home. And this is where like the car timing and all that stuff and then more what I'm gonna get into seems to be like, there's some underlying thing that it's more than just this gang stalking. There's some other element that's happening here. And again, dealing with God in the spiritual side, I'm going to get into that further detail. And this is where it all begins. This is where it all starts. As I'm on my way home, I'm driving. I'm just like, I'm tired. I'm pissed off out of all this thing. I know all the things that have happened to me. And then now the people at the house don't even believe me. Now I'm missing work and all this. And I'm driving home, right, to go back home. So I hit like the main street and I go left to my house. I'm waiting at that light right before I get to my house to turn left to go down my street, and there's one car in front of me. At this point, everyone has gone through my room now, through my car, through my house. I've been drugged. I'm like, now I was actually like worried for my life at this point. I'm like, man, dude, like they're just gonna like kill me, dude. Now that I just got held on a 5150, it just looks like no one's gonna believe me, when really, if you looked at what happened, it was completely unlawful. So I was at this point kind of like I am actually kind of thinking like, well, like worried that for my life almost, right? And so I come to the light to turn down to the street left, like I was saying. I'm sitting there and there's one car in front of me. So the light turns green, the car starts turning in front of me, and then at the very last moment, I just go, dude, screw it, dude, because I didn't want to go home. And I'm like, so I just went right. I just cut over the lanes and I took off right down the other way down the street, right. And as soon as I started turning right, I looked at that car in front of me, and I didn't realize the license plate on that car in front of me that turned, it just said Florida on it. It literally just said Florida on the license plate. And I noticed it as I turned, and I was like, this feeling, this like setting, this like complete just like heaviness, instantaneous. As soon as I saw that Florida license plate and I turned right, and I noticed it as I turned, that it was just like snap, and it was just like boom. instantaneously went into this completely like lowly state, like instantaneously. And again, leading up to all these events and everything that had happened, is that it was so strange. And then you have the person that was inside the facility saying, "I'm here for you," and saying that it was God. And then this guy John, who I've been talking to, he goes, "You want to go to Florida? I got a house on the beach, blah blah blah," and all this. And at this point in time, it was the weirdest feeling I can ever imagine my whole entire life. I'm not even kidding. And it happened instantaneously. It was just like boom, set down, like this lowly state. It was like, you know, that decision in life where like your whole life changes. Like you either go left or you go right, and you go that way and your life is different, you go this way and your life's different. It was like that was that moment. And when I did that, it was like somehow I knew it, that at that very moment, and it just set in completely. I mean, immediately. And it was almost like this completely just low setting feeling, like that was my way. Just like what John had mentioned, you want to go to Florida. I found it extremely odd, right? That car right in front of me at that turn, the license plate just said Florida on it. And it was almost like, man, did I miss my chance? And anyway, so this feeling, just completely lowly state feeling, really weird feeling had set in. And I start driving down the street. And as I'm driving down the street and through where I live, is that every single person is wearing red or black. People walking down the street, okay, are wearing red and black. A guy will have a completely just blank red shirt and black shorts. You know, someone will drive by and they're wearing a red hat and a black shirt. And every single thing was literally in red. Every person was wearing red or black. It was extremely odd. And I'm like, is the whole town in on this thing? Like, what is going on here? And like I said, that feeling set in. As soon as I saw a Florida license plate, it was instantaneously felt this horrible feeling come over me. It's instant. And then now when I'm driving through this area, every person's wearing red or black. Like, no joke, every person had just straight red or black, red shirt, black shorts. They'd walk down the street, they're wearing red or black. Like 95% of every person. And I'm driving down there, and it was almost like, no joke, that I had like slipped like a different dimension. I'm not even kidding. It all happened instantaneously. And as I'm driving through here, like this fear is setting in, and I'm just feeling overwhelmed and just completely lowly state. I'm seeing everyone's in red or black, and I'm like, and the more I drive around, I'm driving far down the street, and every person is still in red or black. All the cars, every car too, and then all the cars, every light I stop at, there's, you know, a red car next to me, red car behind me, red car across the street, all red and black. Red, black, and white. And I'm just like, what is going on here? Like, I literally slipped into a different dimension. I'm not even kidding. And then at this moment, I honestly had thought, like, I went to hell. I'm not even joking. You know, you think of, like, who knows how, when you die, you know what really happens and how it works. And I thought, like, man, maybe did I die from this drug thing? And this is just all, like, a turning point, like that fork in the road, heaven or hell. And it was, like, out of fear, because of fear, I didn't go left. And I let fear get the best of me, and when I turned right, instantaneously it set in. And then I was really thinking at this moment, I was like, maybe this is hell, and maybe this is that decision, like that turning point, like that splitting, heaven or hell. And out of fear, I went right, and it was just because it happened instantaneously. I honestly thought, like, is this like some dimension of like hell or something? And I honestly thought at that moment that, like, truly, like, I could have been dead and that I was in hell. And that this was just like some form or some dimension of hell. Like, this was my hell. Because like I said, like, you know when they say like that feeling where like God removes his hand from you? Is like, that's what I felt like. And then everyone is in red or black, all this. And then as I continue to drive, I'm not even kidding. I'm sitting there, I'm driving. And as I'm turning into this gas station, and I'm pulling in slowly, I start seeing dead flies. Flies start dropping. There's flies, and they were hitting my windshield, and they were dying. These flies, they're actually hitting the windshield and dropping, like 3 flies. They flying and they're dropping. These flies hit my windshield and dropped right on my windshield. And at this moment, I'm like, I was so scared. I honestly, truly thought I was in hell. I'm not kidding. And I had this feeling or this notion inside me, like I was in my car and that, like, I was in hell, but like, if I had stepped out of my car, like, it would be like sealed and done. Like, I would be in hell if I stepped out of my car. And so I was sitting there and I just sat there at the gas station. I didn't even really want to go out and get gas. I just sat there to just kind of think for a moment and look around. I was like truly thinking, like, am I in hell? And then, like I said, the flies were falling and I'm like, dude, I'm in hell. I honestly thought that. And so I was just like, I need to call someone. And so I called my mom and I asked her, hey, you want to go get something to eat? You want to go get lunch? And here's the funniest thing is that my mom doesn't even know how to answer her phone. I mean, and she doesn't even really know how it works. So even if it did ring, she wouldn't even usually know how to answer it. And she usually never has it on her. And like I was saying, usually when she does, she doesn't even answer the phone. So she answered the phone right when I called her, and I thought that was extremely odd too. And I go, hey, you want to get something to eat? And she goes, yeah, let's go get something to eat. And so we decided to go to the Red Robin right in the area where I live. And so I'm still just sitting there, and while I'm waiting for her to hear from her, she goes, oh, let me get ready and I'll call you when I'm on my way. And I'm just sitting in the parking lot and still just going like, what is going on here? This is super odd. And like my mom never answers the phone. It was weird, and like it almost didn't even sound like her. Extremely weird. And as I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the radio, is the weirdest feeling. I don't even know how to explain it. That it was like this every song I was go to was like telepathic. It was so weird. Like everything I was thinking, it was like going along with the song. I don't even know how to explain it. Extremely odd. Like every thought that I had would was synced perfectly with this song. Like what I was thinking, what I was saying, it was extremely weird, and I don't even know how to explain it. And I'm just sitting there, and I had like a quarter tank of gas, maybe less, and I'm like deciding. And as I'm sitting there and the radio is playing, and then I'm thinking and looking at my gas tank, and I'm debating, like, should I go home? Should I just go home? And I had this thought in my head. Like I said, like I honestly thought this was like a dimension of hell, and that I didn't even want to get out of my car. And what I did was I had this feeling that maybe if I just drove home, go left like I was supposed to, and I thought like home, like home, heaven, that would be home. And I felt like I really had this strong sense that I had to make a choice. It was really weird, like that heaven or hell. What was I going to do? If I went to lunch with my mom at Red Robin's, I felt like I would either be in hell, or if I decided to go home, I would be in heaven or something. And I had this super strong feeling of this, that I was like, I had to choose at this moment which way I was going to go. It was really weird. And like I said, then the radio, no matter what song I turned to, it changed. It was like this telepathic thing, like whatever I was singing, it was going on with this song. I don't even know how to explain it. And there's this part of this song, I don't know what song it was, in that it said, when you go up to the bar, it was like singing, it's like, when you go up to the bar and sit down next to this lady, ask her for the proposal or something like that or whatever. And at this moment, like I was saying, is this weird connection. Like I just felt like I knew that it was saying when I go to lunch that would be there. I had that in my head. And I knew that there was going to be like some lady or something where we ate. And so as I'm sitting there, and then I actually was just like crying because I honestly felt like I was like in hell. And I looked down and I had to choose like which way, and I didn't know, which way I should go. And when I looked down, and when I was in this place, I had this bracelet. I just randomly made this bracelet for fun because there was nothing to do there. And it had like rainbow colors, like red, yellow, all that. And so the bracelet that I just randomly made in there, and I mean, there's different colors I could have used or different sayings, but the ones I randomly just decided to choose were these. And it says believe, inspire, wish, imagine, dream. And then also when I got home, my dad had given me a new key to the house, and when he gave it to me, it was the same colors, a rainbow color thing. I think I still have it. So for my key. So out of all the keys he gave me, or happened to choose from, he happened to give me this key, the color of this key, that's the rainbow. And these were the exact same colors that I had made on this bracelet. And like, look, I've never gotten a key like this myself. No one's ever given me a key that looks like this. So already right there, isn't that extremely odd right there. Anyways, and if you look, You'll see that. Look at that. Look at the colors on this to that. And so that's what I saw. I'd made that, and then my dad had randomly, he just gave me this new key to the house. And when I looked, and sitting there, and I was actually like starting to tear up and crying because I felt like this overwhelming sense of what decision to make. And when I looked down, I saw my key hanging there, you know, and it's that color, the rainbow. And I looked at my bracelet on it that I just made for fun in this place, and it was the same colors. And I was like, oh shoot. And I saw the house key. I'm like, I should go home. Like that was like my sign, like I need to go home. And then when I saw that, I go, oh my gosh, like I should go home. Like to me at that moment, I was like, man, that was heaven. Like I just turned away out of fear, and now I'm in hell or something, like some dimension in hell where it's like now, like maybe I still have a chance. Like I have to choose though or something. I didn't know what to do. I was super confused. I'm like, I feel like I had to make a decision that I had like a chance or something. Like I could still get to heaven if I just went back home or the way I was supposed to go. And so anyways, my mom had just called. She goes, okay, I'm pulling up to go to lunch. So I'm slowly backing out, and I'm just at this moment, gosh, going like, man, dude, just say a quick prayer and just say, God, hopefully, you know, just watch over me. And remember, before at the beginning of this video, I never believed in religion. Really, like I despised religion specifically, and like just everything about it, to be honest with you, church especially. And I, you know, I always said like maybe there's a God, but you know, completely really opposite of it. And you know, I'm just like, well, hopefully that going to this restaurant, that this won't be hell or something. But anyway, so I'm just like going slowly, driving over to the restaurant, going like, man, did I make the right choice right now? And as we're going there, we pull up and we get out. Me and my mom go into the restaurant. And kind of coincidentally too, look at the name of the restaurant, Red Robin, that we go to, right? So I'm like, and as we go in there, and then again, same thing inside the restaurant, and I'm just sitting there trying to be calm in front of my mom, like she doesn't know what's going on, like inside of me and what just happened. I mean, especially everything else that I know is what has happened leading up to this point. And then everyone inside the restaurant, again, is in red or black. They're wearing red or black. All, you know, red hat, black hat, or, you know, red shirt. Everyone's in red or black. And remember, and then when we go to sit down, I didn't choose. My mom, you know, they asked us, like, where do you want to sit? You want to sit up here? And my mom goes, yeah. And remember, like I said, like I was sitting in the car. It said, when you go up to the bar, and you see the lady sitting there, you know, right next to you, go up and ask her for a proposal or something like that. Something really weird. And I knew, like I said at that moment, like I just felt like I knew, like there was going to be a lady there or something, whatever. And as I walk in, like I said, everyone's in red or black there too. I'm just like, man, I'm like, what is going on here? Like seriously, and when I mean that, like 95% of everyone's like, all has red or black on. And when we sit down, we end up sitting in the bar area. So you have the bar and the seating around there. You have some booths, you know, and then the tall tables, and then some booths and other things like that. And so they sit us down in the bar, and I'm sitting where I sit. My mom's sitting here. I'm sitting right here on this side. And when I look up, there's a lady sitting right behind us by herself, and she's sitting at one of the tall tables on a booth, and she's looking directly at me, and I'm looking at her, and she's and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at her, and she's in all red, complete red. She's wearing a red hat, she has a red shirt, red pants, all in red, and she's sitting there drinking a drink, and she has a red drink, and she has a red martini, okay, or something, like a red drink. It looked like a red martini that's just sitting there. And I'm like, and when I looked up, I was just like, what the heck? And that's when I'm just like, what is going on here? And then again, at this moment, I'm just sitting here because I still, like I said, still felt like, you know, lowly. And remember, it's not like I went to work fine, I drove home fine. This all happened instantaneously. As soon as I turned right and I looked at that license plate, this all immediately set in instantaneously. Okay, and I really had this strong feeling too, like I could almost see that car driving by, like there goes my heaven, right? Like, and I could see people like looking in the car, like it almost looked like they looked back at me like, what are you doing? You just missed it. Like, Why did you turn right? You had it. You were right there. All you had to do was just follow us and turn left. And I thought, and I go, because no one really knows what happens when you die and how it works, how that work out. And I thought maybe this is how when you die, like you come to like some turning point, and based on your decision, that you end up in heaven or hell. And remember, I turned right out of fear that I didn't want to go home. And then I thought, like the whole love, like God's love and all that. And then you have like that love or fear, the complete opposite. And I thought out of fear, I go, what if, because remember, I wasn't really, I'm not religious at this point. So I'm just thinking of like the love, fear type of thing. And I thought out of fear, I ended up in hell because I didn't turn left. And so I thought, what if that is actually how it works? I mean, like, what if it came to a point and then you have to choose which way you go. And that's like what happens when you die. And I honestly, truly had felt that. And like I said, and all those weird feelings had set in. And as I went to lunch, I'm just sitting there kind of, just like unreal, pretending like nothing, nonchalant, trying to on the outside and not say anything of like what's going on, how I'm feeling. And then as I drive home, I'm honestly thinking like, am I like in hell? Is it like still is like, is this a dimension of hell? We don't know. No one really knows what heaven or hell or afterlife would be like, or if there's like different dimensions, of hell or heaven. And I thought maybe I'm like in some dimension of hell, like where my hell would be like living here in this area at the house I'm in with everything that had happened, that they had set me up right, and then just every day have to relive it basically. And you see, like, I mean, if something's eternal, that's what you would think, that's how it would have to be. And so I'm going home and I'm still just have this feeling like, all this happened. I'm like wondering, like, am I in hell? Like, I truly question that. I thought, is this hell? And then so again, now I go home, whatever. And then when I get up in the morning and start driving again, around town to go to the doctors or to get this stuff, is that every car again, everything's still in red or black. Everywhere I go, all around town, there'll be a red car here, another red car there. Every car across the street at the red lights is all red cars, and then red and black cars, okay, with some white ones thrown in. It was like either red, black, or white, and they were all thrown in. And believe me, because a bright red, just full red car is like you randomly see them, and just everywhere I go, red car, red car, red car, red car, follow me, red and black. And I'm like, man, am I in some like dimension of hell? I honestly thought, like, is this now basically like I was in hell? So over this course of time, as I'm trying to get this note, now I'm missing more days of work before I can even go back. I have to get a note from my doctor. So then more days pass, and by the time I actually get the note, there's their excuse to fire me, okay? Is because I had already missed those days I didn't call, those days that I didn't have a phone or nothing to contact anyone, and then I had to miss more days to get this doctor's note. So that was then their excuse, and I knew everything leading up to this point I had been set up. So it doesn't still, just because you see this weird spiritual side in these things happening, it still doesn't take away from the fact that you were set up and that you were being monitored and surveillance. So some people say, well, all that stuff was made up. No. So now, right, I lost my job. Now I'm at home. And now I'm just honestly thinking, like, am I in hell? I honestly question. I thought, like, I was in hell. And this is, again, now with, like, the car time and all this stuff sets in, starts coming in after. Like, if you watch my other video, you have the helicopters flying over, the chemtrails flying over my house. And this is happening every single day. Okay, and then everything with the TV. So every channel I go to, it's again, now it's all about the dog braces and everything. That's when the customized television comes in. So do you see where they get you in that point? Is that now I've lost my job and everything. Now I'm in this point. And then now that's when everything started to make sense even more of why they did it, why you were set up. What I also figured is that this is what they wanted to do. And you hear stories like this where like that deception and the confusion comes in and taking away one's free will to make a decision on their own freely, is because I feel like this is what they tried to do. That they could easily, the group mobbing, you just have people, a whole bunch of people drive around in red cars right next to you, right? And you have a bunch of people, right, just like the random people, all wear red and black all throughout this. You have a whole bunch of people, and then if you're a GPS in your car where you're going, that they just have these cars follow you. So it's all these red, like, again, to discredit you, and you just came out of like my 5150, so it makes it look like, oh, we're going to discredit you, and that this was the whole point of it. And then so I'd mention it and think like, what's going on here, and start mentioning there's red car, red, everyone's in red or black. Yet at this time I really did have this I felt like this true like spiritual connection thing, and I had that. I made the color of that bracelet thing that I just made while I was in there. My dad had randomly just gave me the key that just happened to be the same color. You couldn't make that up, and so I almost felt like it was a thing like they set up to have this, like they wanted to try to get me to be like some religious person, and then set it up to keep having these things happen. Like, so the repeating the same things, and same thing with the customized TV. When you think of something and then it shows up on a channel too. I had mentioned that with the AI technology that I believe that's using, is that you watch like some Christian or pastor show, and they'll be talking about something like you just were thinking about, and then that's on exactly. And that this thought is like, they're trying to trick me into being some like religious person now. Like they're trying to trick me, and then they're laughing like, haha, this guy, we're gonna make him like religious and Christian or whatever, and push him into a certain religion, and like completely control him, mind control him, and make him think that like God's speaking to him, and he's gonna turn out all religious and all this, and laughing and thinking it's funny, and have this all planned up. Like that's what they're gonna do to me. And so that's what I was thinking. But then I was also thinking, but what if at the same time God really did show up and come through? So you see how that situation, that predicament someone would be in, is if you didn't believe anything before, and now they're trying to trick you or to make you believe like that God's reaching out to you, or that there's some spiritual connection happening here, and that you're just getting tricked and deceived, and they're trying to trick you into it, like God's trying to speak to you. But then you also think, you go, but what if God really is trying to speak to me? Like, what if he really is trying to reach out to me? And then so now you get in that thing like, are they trying to trick me? Is this real? Or is this real? Am I really getting something from God? Especially if you're at that point where you don't really believe, then you're in that. And as I look back, I've heard stories on that where they try to trick people and then make them all religious like that, because that's what they're trying to trick you into belief. And then so I'm like that moment where it's like, is this just a trick and they're trying to trick me? Which I believe that's possibly what they were trying to do. But then you also have, what if God really is trying to reach out? What if this is real? So then you have that. And then again, you also have that weird circumstance where when I'm being held, and you have the guy saying, he's here for me, it's God, and puts his hand on my heart, and that you go, well, was that set up? It makes you think, like, did they set that up? They had some guy come in there and say that to me to set this thing up to try to trick me. And then after that, they would do all this. They'd have the red cars, do all this, have customized television, and then try to trick me into belief, somehow there's some spiritual connect, like God was trying to reach out to me. So again, you see that, like, was it real or is it not real? And that's where you see like that deception. And I believe that's the deception, like when it says that in the Bible, the deception, because then you're not going to know what is which. Like, is God really reaching out to you, or is he not? You're going to be confused, and it's taking away your free will to for someone to make a decision on their own. Because if someone's trying to trick you or influencing you to believe a certain way, or that something's happening, that's like a deception or trying to trick you. So that's taking away your free will, really. And then I thought, like, what if though he really is reaching out, and at the same time they really were setting it up to do that? Like, they sent the guy in there, they set the customized TV in there, they try to trick me when I go into church or something, like to say the same thing, like what I just read in the Bible or something related to the events that happened to me, to say that again to try to trick me. And what if they really did do all that? Yeah, at the same time God really was coming through. See? So, and I almost looked at it like, because I grew up in the 90s. There was the Saved by the Bell episode where, Jesse Spano had like a stepbrother from a different state who came to the school. That one, her stepbrother Eric, that takes apart Belding's car. And the guys or whatever had paid Lisa Turtle or gave her some free concert tickets to a really popular show, and they said, we'll give you these tickets, but if you take Eric. So it was like a setup to have her take him. But when she went with him, she actually ended up really liking him. He liked her too. But then when it came out that the guys gave him the tickets and that they gave him to Lisa, so basically they like paid Lisa to take him. So when he found out that, he thought that she was faking and that it wasn't real, even though she really did like him, right? And then the same thing that, like, so he's in that position, like, well, what if they set it up and it was all fake and she doesn't really like me? But like, what if they really did do that, but then she really did like me? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it puts you in this situation where it's like you're not sure what to believe. That's kind of how I felt. You still kind of have that question in your back of your head, like, are they just doing this? And they're just laughing probably and mocking me, and they think it's funny that they've convinced me. Wouldn't that actually be funny if God did come through? Not only that, he's thinking, oh, you want to try to trick someone into thinking that God's reaching out to him? He goes, you think that's funny to try to trick someone and try to make them believe something? He goes, how about I do it to you? Let me really show you my presence. You think it's so funny? Here, boom. And then what they think is funny when they see me going to church and doing all these things and reading the Bible and all this, and they know that I'm religious now, they're probably laughing like, this is exactly what we wanted him to do. We tricked him. We got him to believe it. Just like we thought we would. And then it ends up turning around that it just happens it was true. And then he showed his power I probably heard a lot of stories of what really happened and how confused what he did to everyone else. And what happened is that you'll see that God did come through. He goes, it's not so funny. And he's probably saying, never do that again, ever, to try to trick someone to believe in God, especially someone who already was on the edge, not decided, that you're trying to trick someone into believing me and you think that's funny. See how it feels for yourself. How do you like it when you're being tricked and you now have to decide? It's not too funny, now is it? And I believe that is what happened. So they're sitting there thinking probably this whole time that they're laughing. I was just following into their steps exactly how they wanted. And then it ended up actually happening to them. That the same thing that they did to me, God did to them. He goes, don't ever do that again, and don't ever do it to any person. Let me show you my power and see how funny it is. It's not funny. And it's not funny when it happens to you or to someone else you know too, because this is serious. Okay, it's real serious, and it's about heaven and hell, and it's not something to mess around with. And God showed them their power. And so not only do you see all that, so like I said, I've lost my job now. You just see red and black cars still everywhere you go. And a lot of people wearing red or black. So this is all happening. And that why I say it's a combination of both is because these things truly are happening. They did do these things. I know that there was people involved. All the communications are monitored. The house is monitored. What you can hear inside the house is monitored. Video they can see inside the house. All of that was true. Okay, but then you do also have the spiritual attack happening also at the same time. And it shows you how Satan works. Because there's just so many things that were actually happening that were impossible to happen. While the gang stalking is true, and they did do these things, and I was being monitored, and I was being surveillance, and they did set it up so this would happen. I was drugged. It doesn't take away from the fact that there still then was a combination of the spiritual attack, where then you do see Satan's work. So the whole point was to get me trapped into that situation, and then once I was already there, then really confuse me, because I know that it had happened, that this was true, that there was people involved, yet it was hard to determine what's true and now what's not true. You don't know what to believe at this point, and that's where Satan really came in. And so some of those weird things that were happening that are just basically unreal, because now you go, this is now beyond just gang stalking and surveillance, because now there's this other element to it which is impossible. And so now in my house during all this time is that every time I go into the kitchen, so someone who lives in the house will always come in at the kitchen at the same time as me. And multiple times every single day, people who haven't left their room for hours on end or not even say anything, is that you'll walk into a door, and right when you go to the bathroom, you'll bump into them. You'll open the door at the same time when no one's even been inside there the whole entire day. And that will happen 3, 4, 5 times every single day, all day. And then right when you try to go to the bathroom, right as you're walking there, someone will come out of their room and they'll just go into the bathroom right in front of you. And then you're like, and that happens every single day, day in and day out, okay? And then every time you go into the kitchen, someone will come down from the kitchen, and then you'll actually bump into them. You'll go into the kitchen at the same time every single day. And they'll be in the kitchen just floating around you like a little gnat, and everyone will walk in there, and they all start coming in the kitchen right when you are in there. And then when I leave, everyone else leaves. Again, then there's no one in the kitchen. No one even goes in there again for hours. And then right when you go back down there, all of a sudden everyone starts merging again around like they're controlled. And then you really start thinking like, dude, like this is crazy. Like, and this is when the people start like coughing. You know, every time I swallow now, everyone in my house starts to at the same exact time I swallow. And it's not that I just notice it. It was a super high statistical rate. Every time I swallow, almost every time when I'd swallow, they'd cough to go at the same exact moment. And every time I try to do anything, someone would always get there right before me. So no one would be in the house, and then I'd go in and watch TV in the living room or something, and then someone will come in out of their room, and they'll, right as I'm about to grab the clicker, they'll just come out like 5 seconds before me and grab the clicker and turn on the TV. Now, again, it's different when you just say, well, you're just noticing it. No, because it never happened before. And this happened, all these things happening just all day long, every single day. And this is the proof and the fact, which I'm also going to go to in another video about, like the people who get mad when they eat, or OCD, is that people are actually being physically controlled. They're being controlled, and they actually have no idea what they're doing. And this is that spiritual warfare, and this is that proof that basically we live in some sort of simulated reality, okay, or like an augmented reality where time and matter and space don't exist. They know what you're going to do before you do it. And some other examples that again too is where you think every person's involved in it. Now when I come home, now there's someone else in my residence who is wearing red or black sweats, and when they never wear red or black, and now they're wearing red or black, just straight red, straight black. And then they just sit there clueless, like they don't know what's going on. They go, and they pretend like they don't know, and then you think that they're involved. Again, this is people being controlled, and it doesn't mean all the other things aren't real. They are real, but you see, it's a combination of both. Some people are just being controlled to try to confuse you, and some people aren't. They're actually involved, okay? And then so further on this, so I'm sitting there still wondering, like, am I in heaven or hell? Like, I still sometimes debated that, like, is this my hell? And I still have this battle every day, because I honestly felt like, am I in hell? Like, I thought like I was in some dimension of hell, like I was in hell. And I was just trying to, like, hopefully find my way out or something, that I could still get out or something. You know, and it had been like roughly 3 or 4 months or something since all this occurred. Some family members asked me if I wanted to go to Yosemite, up to the mountains. And at this point, people were still going in and out of my house. Items were still missing. And so a lot of times I wouldn't even want to leave, because I knew like they would just go into my house and take something, or someone would be moved. I mean, I've been praying to God, like, man, like, help me get out of here. Show me what's ever, you know, during all these months. And so as we go up to Yosemite, and as we get just about before we go into the mountains, there's a billboard sign. There's just a big billboard, and it just says, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then it says God on it. And we just had lunch there at Yosemite, and then the people that I went with had mentioned, hey, Tim Tebow's in town today. He's going to be speaking tonight at some church, and then he's also going to be there tomorrow morning. Let's go. And you know, if I hadn't gone to the mountains with him, you know, I wouldn't have known that. I was like, all right, I'll go. Like, maybe this is it. Maybe this is like the moment. And so when I go to church the next morning, Tim Tebow speaks. He's saying exactly everything I had been reading in the Bible, like that morning, he was reading it. He was saying the same exact thing. And then this is where it gets even crazier. He says this story. He goes, I went to a prison, into a jail. And he goes, I could have went left, or I could have went right. I don't know which way he said he went, but he goes, he just said, you know, I decided to go right, or whatever, for instance. And he goes, and it was death row. And he goes, when I went down there, I talked to someone, one of these guys who was on death row, who was talking about killing himself. I talked to him, and he got saved that day. And think about that. That's a story. And I've been praying, and Tim Tebow, everything he was saying, like, related to me, and everything I've been reading in the Bible, he'd be saying. And then to top it off, he says, I could have gone left, and I could have gone right. And I mean, at that moment, I was just like, I couldn't believe it. And I'm just like, and so right then and there, I was just like, at the end, he's like, anyone who wants to, you know, make Jesus Christ your Lord and Savior, you know, this is your moment. And I felt like that was, for me, totally, like, that was God reaching out to me. And so that really helped me at that moment to feel a lot better. Like, I felt like God spoke with me. He sent Tim Tebow for that moment. And I remember in that sign the day before, when I went to the mountains, I wouldn't even known that he was going to be at church. That sign, it said, I love you, I love you, I love you, God. And that was the day right before this. And I look back at that, and I was like, man, I really felt like that was for me. Which is also funny is that when I look back, remember when I was in that 5150, and he pointed to the mountains, and he goes, see, they're trying to keep you from the top of the mountain. And then, isn't that ironic? I thought, kind of coincidental, huh, that he said that. And then also, I went to Yosemite. There was that billboard, and then the next day, Tim Tebow, and then he says left or right, and then I, you know, give my life to God right there. And then again, though, even after that, I felt really good, but then you still have that setting inside you, like, they sent Tim Tebow, right? Like this whole thing is a setup, because you're being monitored at that moment, like, okay, well, did they set this up? They sent him there to say that because no, they, they're trying to convince me. And then you still kind of have that feeling, are you being tricked or are you not? You know. So that's still in there. So, and again, so that's where you see the deception, and it takes away that free will. And also, I want to point out, like how I've been talking about, you see how people are controlled, and people come home at certain times and start getting louder, start talking. When I started talking about Tim Tebow, they just got home, and then all of a sudden they all start talking all loud. And you see this all the time. It's because people, I'm telling you right now, this is what's happening. People get controlled, and they try to distract people when you're trying to talk about something that someone, right, doesn't want you to hear. All of a sudden, people start getting loud and talking, and to distract what's really going on, what's happening. And this is that control, that is saying controlling people, and they have no idea. So and again, they know what you're going to do before you do it, so it's always perfect timing. So it's almost like time travel, right? Because he knows right when you're going to say that specific thing that you're going to say, someone will come through the door and start talking aloud, turn on the TV. This happens all the time. Also, at this moment in time, I started noticing that everything I did, or pictures I took, or picture I sent, or something, every time I'd see something on the news, super weird. And I got to a point where, like, I just knew that if I took a picture of something, somehow it would relate. I'd be watching news and it would come up. And so I even tested it one day, and I'll show you a picture. I was just in the store and I took this random picture. I can even show you the date of this. Like, there's an alligator holding a tray, a statue, and I'm like, okay, I'll take a picture of this. I don't know what for or why, but I know somehow something's gonna come up in the news. And like within a week, maybe or less, all of a sudden the news show comes on and says, alligator eats baby. That kid who died in Florida, a kid got eaten just a few days after I took that picture. And again, it was like the alligator holding a tray, like food, like breakfast, an alligator. And so you see, and then all of a sudden, an alligator eats a kid. Now, this happened to me all the time. I mean, every single day. And I know no matter what I did or what happened, somehow it was like everything is connected and it would end up on TV. I don't even know what to tell you. I'm just as confused as like you or anyone else would be. I have no idea what's going on. All I know is that every time something like that happens, I take a picture or send a picture or do something like that or mention something. It tends to happen on the news. I'm like, what is going on here? It's so weird. And like I said, it happens so often that I just decided to test it. Like I did, like I said, like that picture with the alligator. I'll show you. You can see the date on it. And then the date the alligator ate that little kid. It was just like a few days later, like a week or something like that, after I took that picture. Then I even tested again. My sister was in Southern California, and then I texted her. I said, watch out for the earthquakes down there. And I'm like, seriously, if this happens now, if there's an earthquake, I'm like, no way, this is going to be weird. And then like a few days later, all of a sudden she goes, there was a big old earthquake down here. It's one of the first bigger earthquakes that had happened in a while. And I just sent her that text, and I'm like, this is so weird. And again, that was just a few days before, and I can even show you the date on the text. That was like early June of 2016, and just like a few days later, there was an earthquake near LA. Also, too, is that like after, right when I got back from the 5150 hold, a few days after that, the ambulance that drove me 3 hours away, then they lied to take me to this place. There was a celebration, like a party going on for that ambulance company. That ambulance company also does the helicopters, which are like the life-saving helicopters. They pick people up. And the same day that they were having a celebration and partying and having having a big party and celebration, a few days after I got back, one of their helicopters had crashed. And I found that really odd that it was the same company, the ambulance company that drove me 3 hours away, which this all seemed to be set up. And then right when I got back a few days later, they had a party for their company, and one of their helicopters had crashed. And I feel bad about that, and I don't know who was in those helicopters or whatever, but found it odd that maybe it was like God saying, if they were involved in this and did set it up, and they drove me 3 hours away, and I just got back, like it was a sign. And then the name of the helicopter seemed to have a significance. If you think about the actual helicopter was called Skylife. If you think about Skylife, think about that, like heaven, and it just so happened to be called Skylife as well. And like, again, I feel completely horrible about what happened about that, and I pray for those people and everyone that happened. It seemed like maybe it was a sign, though, if they are harming people and they set me up and they did do that and they were part of that, maybe that was a wake-up call for them. And just weird things like this started happening. I started noticing all of these things that started happening in the news. And I believe, honestly, to tell you the truth, I do believe that they did set all this up. They planned to do this to me. They had the customized TV. All this is real. But then God actually did show up. He then reversed it on them. Like, you think it's funny to try to trick someone and to believe at this? And you start seeing that weird things like that happening. You start seeing like situations as if maybe God was protecting me during this whole time. There's also multiple avenues that I'd reach out and I'd mention to specific government agencies, or through other ways that maybe I did or someone else did, and that I know where they were reached out to, and no one ever followed up with anything. Why is that? Why would no one follow up with anything whatsoever? Because they know what happened. They know exactly what happened. All of a sudden you see the dismantling. The FBI director gets fired by the president. That's like the second time ever in history. All of a sudden, every single day someone's getting fired or leaving. The NSA director, he resigns. You see all these things dropping out. And that's what God basically, I believe, did to them. And he basically dismantled the whole entire government from this. You have Donald Trump come in. And then also, what's funny is the whole fake news thing when it started. Okay, I know that there's other people who are gang stalking all this, but I'm telling you that there is absolutely something significant in my case, what happened to me, to everyone else's, and to where, listen to this. So I noticed all these things keep happening, right? And then I started reaching out to big newspapers, right? Like media outlet centers, news stations. When I did that, to tell my story, to have someone do something, right, look into it or whatever, then all of a sudden, no joke, I believe it was the very next day, right before I did that, within a couple of days from when I did that, when I reach out to media outlets, a bunch of these in newspapers, and say this story, what happened, all of a sudden, the very next day or the day after that, fake news started. You didn't hear anything about fake news on the TV, where the media actually was talking about fake news. As soon as I reached out, this whole fake news thing started. That was never ever mentioned ever. Nothing, no fake news ever was mentioned. I sent this in to all these places, and the next day or two, fake news was created. It's not random. And after every single thing that had already been happening and how weird everything was, there's absolutely something that's extremely weird that's going on here. I also want to talk back, like, after all this had happening, and like still after Tim Tebow came, months gone by, it was like I still almost had this notion, like, man, like, is this hell? Like, am I in some dimension of hell? Because it was just like repeat the same thing every day, and the same things would happen, the same timing things, super weird things. Again, weird timing things that are outside time, space, and matter. For instance, I'd have my alarms set for certain times or whatever when they go off, and it wasn't in the morning all the times. It'd be different times, and it was so weird that multiple times this had happened, where something like, an odd random occurrence would happen where you grab a cup. It would be something similar to this, where you go and grab like a cup from your counter, and it would drop in your phone, go, and it would break. And at the same exact moment, like a glass shatter like that and break, all of a sudden my alarm would go off. Beep, 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 beep. Instantaneously as the cup would break, like almost that event, like they knew that event was going to happen, and my alarm was set up at that moment and go off right at that moment. That stuff would happen to me all the time. And I'm just like, after it happened like 5, 6, 7 times, I was like, this is so weird. Things like that would happen. Or you'd be walking and you drop, you spill a cup or you spill food on the floor, and the alarm would go toot, 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 and beep off. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude. Like, I'm like, where am I? Is this reality right now? It was the weirdest thing. It's like, am I like in a different dimension? And this is happening in everything all day long. It's so weird. that's why I'm like, seriously, at some point in time, I'm like, is this seriously like a different dimension or something? I honestly, over the months all going by, and then even recently, I still had this notion, like, I needed to go to Florida, because, you know, with the license plate and turning left, like, even though I believed in God and I already accepted God, I still just had this unsettling. I wanted to go to Florida. And I've always wanted to just take like a cruise to like the Caribbean, and I never have. And I just found this one deal, and I'd always, and also too with the timing and money, every time I'd have money, I'd get a little spare money, like something would happen. I'd get a flat tire, or I'd have another extra bill to pay, or registration. I never could save any money, and it's just, again, the same thing every day. I'm just like, wow. But eventually, over the months, and pretty recently, I just had enough money. And I purchased my ticket, and I finally went to Florida. And then I went on this like 2-day cruise. And to me, it was more like I'm just going, and it's like me and God, basically. There's no way to explain it to anyone, how I felt that day where that car turned left, and how everything happened after that. The license plate saying Florida, and the guy from where I was held, you know, saying, hey, come to Florida with me. And the funniest thing is, because I also felt like why that was happening is because I've always had this feeling of Florida. And I tell you, this is really weird. Growing up, and something about Florida, I loved Florida. And I was like, I pictured myself going to Florida and living in Florida. And I honestly thought that like through most of my life, like I was going to go to Florida and live in Florida and all this. And I love the Caribbean and all this. And so also that whole thing about him mentioning to go live in Florida on the beach, and then the car saying Florida. And remember, I said it was like that point in time where I had to make a decision. And I honestly felt like when I turned right, and when I thought of that license plate with Florida, like that made sense to me too. Like that was heaven. That was like where I was supposed to go, Florida. And I went the wrong way. Really weird. And there's no way to truly explain how I ever felt. No one will ever be able to explain it. And there's not even really any way to explain it. Really, it's hard to explain. And even if you could, it's hard for people to understand. But anyway, so I just had this urge, like, man, I just got to go to Florida. And then I always wanted to go to Caribbean on a cruise. And so I took like a 2-day cruise recently, and I went down to Florida. Like, basically, I'm just like, only God knows how I feel right now. And basically what it meant to me to just go on the trip. And that's like kind of how I felt, like I'm just going, like, me and God, like whatever happens. And so I went down there, and just to like basically settle this whole thing of left and right, and then just go from there with God. And finally, it was like everything finally worked out. I got down there, I went to the cruise, and I had always felt like, man, just like the same day over and over. And when I went to the Bahamas, and it was finally the first time where it's like this wasn't the same thing every day, and I was really like, okay, kind of like with God, like, you're not in hell, okay, basically. And it took a long time basically to get there. So we went down there, and we were in the Bahamas for like one day. I rode some wave runners and stuff, and then when we came back, it was kind of cool because as we were leaving the island, you know, from the back of the boat, and you look back at the island where you came from, the boat was going away, and there just happened to be a big rainbow. It just went boop, from the very back of the boat. It's just like from the island, it was just perfectly right on the back, right behind the boat. And it just went almost from like the side of the island to the other side, like perfectly, just boom. It's right there, and I was just like, wow. And I have some pictures I took of that too, which was cool. It's kind of like God saying, you know, it was like a gift for me. And the other thing I thought was really strange how it all lined up was I purchased my tickets in this trip way before. I just picked these days that worked out for me. What ended up happening is after I had already purchased these days and the plane tickets and everything, is that someone had mentioned like, oh, aren't you going to go to the Harvest? And I was like, the Harvest? What? I forgot. I remember. And I was like, oh, is that the Great Glory thing, the concert, the Harvest? And that was down in Southern California where I used to live. And I was like, no way. And when I looked it up, the Harvest, on the day that it was the 18th. The day before my trip, and I was leaving from LAX down there. I wasn't flying out from here. I was flying down in Southern California on Saturday on the 19th, and it just so happened I had no idea, and the Harvest was the day before I was gonna leave, and down in Southern California where I used to live. And here's even the stranger part. So it was like the day before, and it's almost like, you know, your Harvest, and then I go on my trip. Not only that, so here's even the cooler part, is that the Harvest I used to live in Southern California, and actually when I was like maybe 13 young, or 14, 12, somewhere around in there, is that I went to the Harvest at Angel Stadium. And also, think about that's kind of funny too, Angel Stadium. So I went to the Harvest at the Angel Stadium, and that was actually the first time where they say, come down to the field and, give your life to Jesus Christ and God. And I did that when I was really young, and it was at the Angel Stadium at the Harvest. And then, like I said, growing up, like as I grew up older, like I had nothing to do with religion, didn't really believe in the religion, kind of despised basically like church and everything about it. So after all this had happened in my trip, I had already planned my tickets, and it's the Harvest, and it's the Angel Stadium, and it's the day before I leave. And not only that, it also just so happened to be that it was the first time when I gave my life to God, where I got saved, whatever, it was at the Harvest at Angel Stadium, the same exact spot. So it was like God saying, here, let's start you back to where you started, where it all began. And it was like his gift, like, setting me up for this trip, like, 'cause it was the day before my trip, and I was leaving right out of LAX the day before. The another craziest part about this, where Central California is, right, the Central Valley, to drive down to Southern California, here's the funniest part. What do you have to go through? This gets funny. The Grapevine. You have to drive through the Grapevine, the mountains, that hill pass. From Central Valley, you drive through the Grapevine, and then you end up in LA, and then you come through. So isn't that funny? It was like when you related to the Bible, it was like I was physically going through the Grapevine into the Harvest. I mean, it was crazy how that all worked out, and all the things these little things, like I'm driving through the Grapevine to the Harvest, literally the Harvest at Angel Stadium, and where I also was the first time got saved was there. I mean, it all just lined up perfectly. And then like I said, when I left the islands, and then I get a rainbow just perfectly right behind the boat as we're leaving. The whole thing, it was just so cool. And then how everything lined up, like I said, just like perfectly. And like I said, is that it was all I had no idea. The Harvest didn't even cross my mind. I didn't even know which month it was. I didn't know the dates. I had purchased my tickets and everything. And just the way how everything lined up, it's just like, like it says in the Bible, like cut the sickle in the grapes, like cut the grapes, like the harvest is ripe, right? You cut the grapes from what? The harvest, from the grapevine, or it's from the grapevine. And I'm driving through the Grapevine to go to the Harvest. Like, how crazy does that get? Like, and then also I wanted to speak on is, like, while all this gang stalking, while this FBI clinic was investigated and all these things were happening, my house was tapped. That medical clinic did shut down. And somewhere in the lines, it does seem that, like, was I being tricked? Were they trying to make me believe, like, in God? And you still have that thing, you're not sure. But I still believe that God did come through, and that they might have thought and laughing all the way, like, to the bank, haha, we got him to do exactly what we want. But he actually did come through. And there's just so many signs, like all this stuff and there's other things that are just outside time, space, and matter, which just don't add up. And it shows you that spiritual side too, of like how the workings of Satan and God work along with this whole situation. And also, like I said, is that when that whole thing happened, after I came back from the 5150 and I went right or left, 2 weeks after that incident, like I had also mentioned, the wart on my foot, it just fell off. Like, it had been there for 10 years, and it was huge. It was spreading all over my foot. Oh, and one other thing I also want to point out is, as I look back on my life, left or right, I had remembered, I was thinking about just like everything, even stuff like when I got saved at the Angel Stadium and all this, is that I remember, like, when I was in college, I used to, have debates with my dad on, like, religion and God. And one of the things I remember, and I go, isn't that funny? One of the things I actually brought up to my dad in a discussion, I think I might have mentioned this multiple times, but I know for a fact I mentioned it at least once. And I go, wow, that's kind of funny, right? Ironic. Is that I had mentioned to my dad, I said, you know what? God knows what everything's going to happen before it happens, right? So I go, if he and you have free will, but he still knows what you're going to do before you do it. So I said, and I gave this example, no joke, this analogy to my dad. I go, imagine let's say there's a guy walking down the street and he has to go down an alley, and he can either go right or he can go left, and he has to choose. It's either or. It's either that way or that way. And if he goes this way, he dies. And let's say he goes down the alley and he gets stabbed and he dies. And then if he goes the other way, he lives. And I go, if you have free will to make that decision, but if God already knows what you're going to do before you do it, and then he still brings you into the world, did you truly ever have a chance? Did you ever have a choice? Because even though you had free will, if he knew what you were going to do before you did it and then still brought you into the world, I said that to my dad. I go, then you really don't have a choice. You don't even have a chance. That you were just predestined to go right or left, and it was already going to be done before you could make that decision. And that guy who chose to go right and die, he was already dead. He didn't even have a chance. And look what happened to me. That break happened. And remember, at the moment, I hadn't even thought about this. This took months, maybe even almost over a year before I remembered I had that conversation with my dad. And here I am, that Florida that went left and that right. And remember, like I said, as soon as I turned right, instantaneously, that feeling came over me. It was instant. That left or right moment. When I actually had remembered that story I told my dad, and what happened to me going left or right, and I go, wow, that was God just showing me like how he works in different people's lives. That was like my second chance. He showed me I went right or left, and that if I did go left, that was my life, I would have died. That was me ever finding God. So when I went right there, is that he showed you when my argument was you don't have a choice or a chance. It's like he showed me the same thing happened to me. I went right or left, and then I do have a choice, and that I get a chance, I get a second chance. Not only just for me, but everyone gets a second chance. It seems like to me it was like my second chance. And you know, I think it's to everyone that everyone does get a chance, regardless of what you think, you get a chance. And that was his way of showing me, and that was like my second chance. And I also want to point out, funny enough, when I went to the harvest, I went there that night before my trip, and what did Greg Laurie speak on? Second chance. It was second chance. He said second chance for America. That was his thing, and it was about Jonah, you know, and how he got swallowed up and then spit out, and that he had to go preach to the certain people to give them a second chance. And it was like, I got a second chance, and then his topic was second chance for America, and then he talks about Jonah also being you know, giving these people a second chance. Imagine the day that I left on my trip, the solar eclipse. Also, the day I left for my cruise on the 21st was the day of the solar eclipse. Okay? There's so much stuff lined up here I can't even tell you. Not just personally with me, but just so many things. It's unreal, unbelievable. And how everything lined up, like I thought that was my second chance, then I go to the harvest, second chance, and then it's second chance for America. And then he speaks about Jonah and how he went to give those people second chance, and how when I went on my trip, it was during the solar eclipse. And I had no idea. I didn't plan that. My day I left on the cruise is the solar eclipse. I also want to point out that, think about when that path that it takes, what do they call that? It's called the path of totality. And if you look up what totality means, it's completeness. It's done, it's finished. And then you see all that, and then I get the rainbow when I leave, and I go back on the ship. There's so much stuff there. I mean, mixed up. I mean, it's endless. So even if a couple years ago I despised it, and while after all this, even feeling like I was being tricked, I believe God came through, and that I know that there's other people out there, they know what happened to me, and they know, and that if I heard their story, there'd probably be some crazy stuff that happened, like how this happened, like while God was watching over me this whole entire time. While God was watching over me this whole entire time. God was watching over me this whole entire time. God was watching over me this whole entire time. God was watching over me this whole entire time.